The name hung in the air like a curse. Void Singers. Even without knowing what they were, Taman felt a chill run down his spine. The Archon's holographic form flickered and images began to appear around them. Stars dying, galaxies going dark, civilizations turning to dust. What are they? Heijen asked, her voice barely a whisper. Entities from outside, the Archon said. They exist partially beyond our reality, in dimensions we cannot fully perceive. 3 million years ago they came to this galaxy. They did not conquer or destroy in the way you understand. They unmade things. They sang reality apart. The images showed strange forms that hurt to look at, shapes that existed in too many angles at once. Wherever they went, matter simply ceased to exist. Not destroyed, not converted to energy, just erased as if it had never been. The Makers fought them for 10,000 years. The Archon continued. It was a war that reshaped the galaxy. Entire star clusters were used as weapons. The Makers bent the laws of physics, reached into impossible mathematics, became something beyond mortal comprehension. They won, but barely, and in winning they realized something terrible. What? Taman asked. They had become like the Void Singers. In their desperation to survive, they had transformed themselves into beings of pure will and power. They could destroy galaxies with a thought. They could rewrite the fundamental forces of the universe. But they had lost their humanity in the process. Some of them enjoyed the power too much. Some wanted to remake the entire universe in their image. Soman stared at the images. So they reset themselves. Yes, the Archon said. The wisest among them saw what they were becoming. They sealed the Void Singers away in dimensional prisons that would hold for millions of years. Then they scattered their own species across the galaxy in various states of dormancy. Earth was the primary arc, where humanity would evolve naturally and rediscover civilization without the weight of their ancient power. When the Void Singers eventually broke free, humanity would return, having relearned mortality and compassion. But we're not ready, Heijen said. We barely understand our own technology, let alone precursor knowledge. You have 30 years, the Archon said quietly. The number hit them like a physical blow. 30 years, not centuries or millennia. 30 years. How do you know? Taman demanded. I have been monitoring the dimensional prisons. They are weakening faster than predicted. The Void Singers are patient, but they are also inevitable. They will break free in approximately 30 years. When they do, they will find a galaxy full of young civilizations that have no defense against them. Taman paced the chamber, his mind racing. 30 years to prepare for an enemy that had nearly destroyed his godlike ancestors. It was impossible. Can we reseal them? Make the prison stronger? No. The seals were designed to be permanent. Their weakening is a natural consequence of entropy. Nothing lasts forever, not even Maker technology. Then we need to evacuate the galaxy, Soman said. Get everyone out before they arrive. To where? The Archon asked. The Void Singers followed the Makers across 3 galaxies before this one. They are drawn to consciousness, to life. There is nowhere to run. Heijen looked at Taman. Then we have to fight. We have to become the Makers again. No, Taman said immediately. You heard what the Archon said. They became monsters. I won't let that happen to humanity. Then you will let the galaxy die, a new voice said. They turned to see another hologram appearing. This one was not the Archon. It was Admiral Velcross, commander of the Concordat military. His insectoid form clicked and chittered as he spoke through his translator. I have been listening to your conversation. My ships may be frozen, but my communications remain active. Admiral, Taman said carefully. Do not insult me with pleasantries, Velcross said. You have just admitted that an existential threat is coming, one that will destroy everything. And you refuse to access the power that could stop it because you are afraid of what you might become? My ancestors made that choice for a reason. Your ancestors are dead. Velcross's mandibles clacked angrily. We are alive. My people have existed for 2 million years. The crystalline races have existed for even longer. Entire civilizations will be erased because you are too proud to use your inheritance. It's not pride, Heijen interjected. It's wisdom. The Makers understood that absolute power corrupts absolutely. If humans regain that power, we might defeat the Void Singers only to become the next threat. A theoretical threat versus a certain one, Velcross said. I know which I choose. The Archon raised a hand. The debate is academic. Captain Taman cannot make this decision alone. This affects all of humanity, all species in the galaxy. It must be discussed openly. Then release my ships, Velcross demanded. Let the Concordat Council convene. We will decide together. Taman looked at the Archon, who nodded. The time field collapsed and the frozen ships suddenly sprang back to life. Confused shouting erupted over the comms as crews realized what had happened. The ships immediately retreated to a safe distance, weapons still powered but not firing. Within hours, representatives from every major species in the Concordat arrived at the installation. They gathered in a massive chamber that the Archon prepared for them, a space that could accommodate hundreds of different life forms. Taman stood with Hagen and Salman, feeling completely out of place among ambassadors and military leaders. Ambassador Rixthar spoke first. His crystalline form refracted the chamber's light into rainbow patterns. We have confirmed the Archon's story through our own analysis. The precursor seals are indeed weakening. The threat is real. He paused, his form dimming. And we have confirmed that humans are biologically identical to precursor remains we have studied. The DNA matches perfectly. Murmurs spread through the assembly. Species that had spent millennia worshipping the precursors now faced the reality that those gods had been humans all along. This changes the political landscape entirely, said Representative Thune, speaking for the Silicon-based collective. If humans are the precursors, they have legitimate claim to every precursor installation in the galaxy. That represents technology and resources beyond measure. We don't want that, Taman said quickly. We never asked for any of this. What you want is irrelevant, Velcross said bluntly. The question is what you will do. Will you access your ancestors' power and help defend the galaxy? Or will you let us all die while you preserve your precious morality? It's not that simple, Hagen argued. The awakening process is dangerous. The Archon explained that forced awakening leads to madness. It has to be voluntary and it takes time. Time we do not have, Velcross shot back. 30 years is nothing in cosmic terms. It's enough, Taman said suddenly. Everyone turned to look at him. He took a deep breath. The Archon said every human carries the genetic key. What if we start small? Volunteers who undergo careful, controlled awakening. We learn to use the technology gradually, without losing ourselves. We train, we prepare, and when the Void Singers arrive, we fight them as humans, not as gods. A compromise, Rixthar said thoughtfully. Access the power but maintain control. Can it work? Velcross asked the Archon. It is possible, the Archon said. The Makers did not become monsters overnight. It was a gradual corruption over thousands of years of war. If the humans maintain connections to their mortal nature, if they remember what they are fighting for, they might wield the power without being consumed by it. The debate continued for hours. Some species argued for immediate full awakening of all humans. Others wanted to quarantine humanity entirely, to prevent them from accessing any precursor technology. Taman listened to it all, feeling the weight of billions of lives pressing down on him. Finally, a vote was called. By a narrow margin, the Concordat agreed to Taman's proposal. Humanity would be allowed to access precursor installations under supervision. Volunteers would undergo controlled awakening. But any sign of the corruption the ancient Makers experienced, any hint of humans trying to dominate the galaxy, and the agreement would end. You are on probation, Velcross told Taman. Prove you can handle your heritage or we will find another way to stop the Void Singers. After the assembly dispersed, Taman stood alone in the chamber with the Archon. Did I make the right choice? There is no right choice, the Archon said gently. Only the choice you can live with. The Makers faced the same dilemma 3 million years ago. They chose power and nearly lost their souls. You choose restraint. We shall see which path leads to survival. Through the installation's windows, Taman could see the stars. Somewhere out there, the Void Singers were awakening. The clock was ticking. And humanity had to become something more than they were, without losing what made them human in the first place. It seemed like an impossible task. But then again, his ancestors had done the impossible before. Maybe he could too. The lights continued to surge through the installation as Taman stood frozen at the console. His medallion had stopped glowing, but it still felt warm against his skin. Around him, screens displayed information in languages he shouldn't understand, yet somehow he could read them, not with his mind, but with something deeper, something that felt like memory. Captain, we need to move, Soman said urgently. The Concordat ships are powering weapons. But Taman couldn't move. The voice had spoken again, this time directly into his mind. The Archon, it called itself, an artificial intelligence that had been waiting for 3 million years. And now it wanted to talk, please, Taman said aloud. What's happening? What are you? The air shimmered and a form appeared before them. It wasn't physical, just light and energy shaped into something humanoid. The Archon looked at Taman with eyes that held the weight of eons. I am the Guardian, it said in Korean. Left behind when your people departed. You are human, yes? The genetic markers match. You are the Makers, returned at last. The Makers? Hagen stepped forward, her scientific curiosity overriding her fear. You mean the precursors? We're not the precursors. We're just humans. We evolved on Earth. No, the Archon said gently. That is what you were taught, but it is not truth. 3 million years ago, humans ruled this galaxy. You built wonders that bent reality itself. You achieved immortality, transcended the limitations of flesh and time. You were gods, Taman shook his head. That's impossible. We have records of our evolution. We came from Earth naturally. Earth was created, the Archon explained. Not the planet itself, but the conditions for human life there. Your ancestors seeded it, placed your species in a state of dormancy, allowed you to evolve naturally from the beginning. It was a reset, a chance to become mortal again and rediscover what it meant to live finite lives. Why would they do that? Soman asked. Why give up immortality and power? The Archon's form flickered sadly. Because power corrupts. The ancient humans had become something terrible in their perfection. They could reshape reality with thought, but they had forgotten compassion, forgotten what it meant to struggle and grow. So the wisest among them made a choice. They would scatter their species across the galaxy, let them start over as mortals, and only return to their legacy when they had relearned humility. Hagen was frantically recording everything. This changes everything we know about human history. About galactic history. The precursor ruins we've been studying were our ruins. Captain Taman, Rixthar's voice cut through their conversation. Exit the installation now. This is your final warning. Taman looked at the Archon. What do they want? They fear you, the Archon said simply. For millennia, the younger species have studied precursor technology without understanding it. They worship your ancestors as gods. Now those gods have returned as one of the weakest species in the Concordat. They do not know whether to kneel or fight. Outside, the Concordat ships were moving into attack formation. Taman could see them through the installation's sensors, 15 warships bristling with weapons. His small salvage ship wouldn't last 10 seconds against that firepower. We need to leave, Sumin said. Right now. But the Archon raised a hand. You are in no danger. The Relic is a fortress, not merely a monument. Allow me to demonstrate. Space around the installation rippled. The Concordat ships opened fire, sending streams of plasma and missiles toward them. Taman braced for impact, but nothing happened. The weapons simply vanished as they approached, passing through folds in space-time that the Archon had created. Impossible, Rixthar whispered over the comm. No shield technology can do that. This is not shield technology, the Archon said calmly, broadcasting to all the ships. This is reality manipulation. A basic application of dimensional folding. The Makers perfected it 2 million years before your species achieved spaceflight. The Archon waved its hand again, and suddenly all 15 Concordat ships froze. They hung in space, completely motionless. Their crews were alive but trapped in a localized time dilation field, experiencing 1 second for every hour that passed outside. They are unharmed, the Archon assured Taman, but they needed to understand the situation. You are not helpless children to be arrested. You are the inheritors of the greatest civilization this galaxy has ever known. Taman felt sick. Release them, please. This will start a war. The war has already begun, the Archon said. Not with weapons, but with knowledge. The moment I activated and recognized you, everything changed. Every species in the Concordat is watching right now. They see a human standing in a precursor installation that responds to his touch. They see technology that can freeze fleets with a gesture. They will not forget this, Hagen was pale. What happens now? Now you learn, the Archon said. You must understand what you are, what you were, and what you could become again. The knowledge is here, waiting. 3 million years of history, technology, and power. I'm just a salvage captain, Taman protested. I'm not special. I'm nobody. You wear the key, the Archon said, gesturing to the medallion. That symbol has been passed down through your family for thousands of generations. Your ancestors made sure the bloodline would survive, that someone would eventually return here. You may be a salvage captain now, but your DNA carries the coding of the makers. Touch the console again. Let me show you. Taman hesitated, then placed his hand back on the console. Information flooded into his mind, but not as words or images. It came as understanding, as instinct. He suddenly knew how to manipulate matter at the molecular level, how to fold space, how to perceive dimensions beyond the normal three. It was overwhelming and terrifying and exhilarating all at once. He pulled his hand away, gasping. That's too much. I can't process all that. You will in time, the Archon said. The knowledge is now part of you. Your brain will adapt, your neural pathways will restructure. In days, you will be able to access it consciously. In weeks, it will be as natural as breathing. What about Earth? Solomon asked. What about the rest of humanity? They will learn too if they choose, the Archon said. Every human carries the genetic key. Every human can awaken to their heritage. But it must be their choice. Forced awakening leads to madness. A new voice crackled over the comm. It was from Earth, from the human government. Prime Minister Choi Yebin sounded panicked. Captain Taman, this is an official order. Stand down immediately. Release the Concordat ships and submit to their authority. Humanity cannot afford to antagonize the entire galaxy. Taman looked at the frozen ships, at the Archon, at his crew. He thought about the knowledge burning in his mind, about the choice his ancestors had made 3 million years ago. They had chosen to be mortal, to be humble, to earn their place among the stars rather than rule it. But now circumstances had changed. The galaxy knew. There was no going back. Prime Minister, Taman said carefully, with respect, I don't think we have the luxury of submission anymore. The moment this installation activated, everything changed. We need to understand what we're dealing with before we make any decisions. You're making a mistake, Choi said. You're going to get us all killed. Maybe he was right. But Taman looked at Hagen's excited face, at the wonder in her eyes as she studied the precursor technology. He thought about all the times aliens had dismissed humans as primitive, as newcomers who didn't understand the galaxy's complexity. Archon, he said slowly, tell me everything. Tell me why the Makers left. Tell me what they feared so much that they gave up godhood. The Archon's expression became grave. Very well. But you will not like the answer. The Makers did not leave because they wanted to. They left because something was coming, something that even gods could not defeat. What? They are called the Void Singers, and they are returning. The salvage ship Daewon drifted through the darkness of space, its hull covered in patches and repairs from countless missions. Captain Lee Taman sat in the command chair, watching the scanner display with tired eyes. He had been running salvage operations for 5 years now, picking through the remains of old battles and abandoned stations. It wasn't glamorous work, but it paid the bills. Captain, I'm picking up something strange, Base Amin called from the engineering station. She frowned at her screens, her fingers dancing across the controls. There's a distress beacon in the Ashara sector. Taman sat up straighter. The Ashara sector? That's forbidden space. The Galactic Concordat sealed it off decades ago. I know, Soman said. But this beacon is old. Really old. The signal pattern doesn't match anything in our database. Dr. Park Hagen looked up from her research station. The xenoarchaeologist had joined them 2 weeks ago, paying good money to tag along on their salvage runs. She was obsessed with finding clues about humanity's past, always mumbling about gaps in the historical record. We should investigate, Hagen said, her eyes bright with excitement. An unknown beacon in forbidden space? This could be important. Taman rubbed his face. Every instinct told him to ignore it and move on. Breaking Concordat law meant serious trouble. But business had been slow lately, and Hagen was paying triple their normal rate. Maybe there was something valuable out there. Fine, he said, but we're just taking a quick look. If anything seems dangerous, we jump out immediately. Solman plotted a course and the Daewon slipped into hyperspace. When they emerged in the Ashara sector, Taman's breath caught in his throat. Floating before them was a structure so massive it blocked out the stars behind it. It was easily the size of a small moon, covered in strange geometric patterns that seemed to shift when he looked at them directly. Mother of stars, Solman whispered. What is that thing? Hagen was already running scans, her hands shaking with excitement. The energy signature matches precursor technology. This is a precursor installation, an intact one. She turned to Taman, her face flushed. Do you understand what this means? The precursors disappeared 3 million years ago. Every installation we've found has been dead, empty. But this one is different. Different how? Taman asked. It's in standby mode. Not active, but not completely dead either. Like it's waiting for something. Taman stared at the structure. The precursors were legendary in the galaxy. Every species had studied their ruins, trying to understand the civilization that once dominated the stars. Humans had only joined the Galactic Concordat 50 years ago, and most alien species treated them like ignorant children. But the precursors were different. They were gods, masters of technology that seemed like magic. We need to board it, Hagen said. Are you insane? Soman shot back. That thing could be dangerous. And if the Concordat finds us here, we'll spend the rest of our lives in a prison cell. She's right, Taman said. We should report this and let the authorities handle it. Hagen's face fell. Please, just one look. I've spent my entire life studying the precursors, and this might be my only chance to see an intact installation. She paused, then added quietly, I'll double your payment. Taman looked at Soman, who shrugged. Money was money. 1 hour, he said. We go in, take a quick look, and get out, agreed? Agreed, Hagen said, though her smile suggested she had no intention of keeping that promise. They suited up and took a shuttle across to the structure. Up close, it was even more impressive. The metal was seamless, without any visible joints or welds. Strange symbols covered every surface, glowing faintly with internal light. As they approached an opening, the symbols began to pulse brighter. Is it reacting to us? Soman asked nervously. I don't know, Taman admitted. His hand unconsciously went to the medallion hanging around his neck. It was a family heirloom passed down through generations. His grandmother had given it to him before she died, telling him to never take it off. He'd always thought it was just a piece of jewelry, but now it felt warm against his chest. They entered the structure through a massive doorway that opened silently as they approached. Inside was a corridor that stretched into darkness. Their suit lights revealed walls covered in more symbols, some of which looked strangely familiar to Taman, though he couldn't say why. Wait, Hagen said, stopping suddenly. She was staring at one section of wall, her face pale. These symbols, I've seen them before. In other precursor ruins? Soman asked. No, Hagen said slowly. In ancient human texts, from before we joined the Concordat. These symbols are similar to old Korean writing, but much older. Impossibly old. Before anyone could respond, alarms blared in their helmets. Ships detected, the Daewon's computer announced. Multiple vessels entering the sector. Taman cursed. How many? 15 ships. Concordat military signatures. They're hailing us. Put it through. A crystalline face appeared on his helmet display. Ambassador Rixthar, one of the Concordat's senior diplomats. His species looked like living glass, refracting light in beautiful patterns. Right now, those patterns showed anger. Captain Taman, Rixthar said, his voice like wind chimes. You are in violation of Concordat law. Exit the precursor installation immediately, and prepare to be taken into custody. Ambassador, we were just investigating a distress beacon. Save your excuses. We've been monitoring this installation for decades. Every species has tried to activate it. All have failed. The relic is dead, and your pathetic attempt to claim some connection to the precursors is insulting. The relic? Hagen asked. You know about this place? Of course we know about it, Rixthar said dismissively. It's been dead for 3 million years. Now exit immediately or we will remove you by force. Taman was about to agree when his medallion suddenly blazed with heat. He gasped and grabbed it, pulling it away from his skin. The metal was glowing, pulsing with the same rhythm as the symbols on the walls. Captain, Soman said nervously. What's happening? The corridor suddenly lit up. Light raced through the symbols, spreading like wildfire through the structure. The entire installation shuddered, and a deep vibration thrummed through the floor. Taman stumbled forward, his hand touching a console he hadn't noticed before. Everything exploded with light. When his vision cleared, the corridor was blazing with illumination. Screens flickered to life, showing star maps and data streams. The vibration grew stronger, spreading through the entire structure. Through the doorway, they could see space outside lighting up as the installation came fully online. Impossible. Rixthar breathed over the comm. The relic is activating. Then a voice spoke, deep and resonant, in perfect Korean. Welcome back, Maker. The Archon has awaited your return. Taman stared at the console, his hand still pressed against it. The medallion around his neck blazed like a small star. All around them, the dead installation roared to life, responding to something in his touch, his presence, his blood. Something only a human possessed. In that moment, everything the galaxy thought it knew about the precursors shattered. And Taman realized his simple salvage mission had just changed everything. 2 weeks after the concorded assembly, Taman found himself back on Earth. The government had requisitioned a military facility in the mountains of South Korea for the Awakening program. 50 volunteers had been selected from across humanity, each one screened carefully for psychological stability and commitment to the greater good. Taman walked through the facility, observing the preparations. Dr. Park Hagen had taken charge of the scientific aspects, working with the Archon to understand exactly how the awakening process worked. Bai Soman had stayed behind on the Daewon, maintaining the ship and keeping watch over the installation with a skeleton crew. "Captain," Hagen called, waving him over to her lab. "I need you to see this." He joined her at a console displaying complex genetic data. "What am I looking at?" "Human DNA," she said, "but not the parts we use. See these sections here? They're dormant, shut down. The makers encoded their knowledge into the genome itself. When you touched the console at the installation, your medallion acted as a key, triggering the activation of these dormant genes." "So the medallion is necessary?" "No, it was just a focus, a way to jumpstart the process. Now that the Archon is active, it can awaken humans directly. But here's the concerning part." She pulled up another screen. "The awakening process rewrites neural pathways. It physically changes the brain to accommodate new ways of thinking, new ways of perceiving reality. It's painful and there's a chance of complications." "How much of a chance?" Hagen hesitated. "The Archon estimates a 5 to 10% fatality rate." Taman felt cold. "So we could lose 5 people out of 50, or more. We won't know until we try. But Captain, even those who survive will be changed. Their personalities might shift. Their values might alter. They'll have access to memories and knowledge from millions of years ago. We don't know how that will affect their psychology." "Have you told the volunteers?" "Yes, they all still want to proceed." Taman went to meet the volunteers. They came from all walks of life. There was Kang Minho, a fighter pilot who wanted to protect his family from the coming threat. Lee Yuna, a physicist who saw this as the ultimate research opportunity. Park Do-hyun, a teacher who believed humanity needed to step up and take responsibility for their heritage. Each had their own reasons, but all shared the same determination. "Are you sure about this?" Taman asked them during the briefing. "Once you start, there's no going back. You'll be changed forever." "We're sure," Minho said. The others nodded in agreement. The first awakening was scheduled for the next day. The Archon had established a connection to the facility, projecting a hologram to guide them through the process. The volunteer would sit in a specially prepared chamber, while the Archon activated their dormant genes remotely. Lee Yuna went first. She sat calmly in the chamber, electrodes monitoring her brain activity. "I'm ready," she said. "Beginning activation," the Archon announced. For the first minute, nothing seemed to happen. Then Yuna gasped, her body going rigid. The monitors showed her brain lighting up like a fireworks display. She began to scream. "Should we stop it?" Taman demanded. "No," the Archon said firmly. "The pain is necessary. Her neurons are forming new connections. Stopping now would cause permanent damage." They watched helplessly as Yuna convulsed in the chair, tears streaming down her face. It lasted 5 minutes, though it felt like hours. Then suddenly she went still. The monitors showed her brain activity settling into new patterns, different from normal human readings but stable. Her eyes opened. They glowed faintly for a moment, then returned to normal. But there was something different about her gaze, something ancient and knowing. "How do you feel?" Hagen asked. Yuna looked at her hands, flexing her fingers. "I can see the quantum fields," she whispered. "The probability waves. Everything is connected, everything is just mathematics underneath." She looked up, tears in her eyes. "It's beautiful and terrifying. I remember things now. Not my memories, but inherited ones. I remember the war. I remember what we did to survive." "What did they do?" Taman asked gently. "Terrible things," Yuna said. "Necessary things. They sacrificed entire systems to slow the Void Singers. They created weapons that could kill stars. They became the very monsters they fought against." She stood up shakily. I understand now why they reset themselves. No one should have that much power and remain sane. Over the next week, 49 more volunteers went through the awakening. 46 survived. 4 died during the process, their brains unable to handle the transformation. Each death weighed on Taemin like a stone. But those who survived were remarkable. Kang Minho could now interface with any technology instinctively, seeing the underlying code of reality. Park Do-hyun could manipulate electromagnetic fields with his mind. Others displayed different abilities, each one connected to some aspect of precursor technology. However, the changes went beyond abilities. Some of the awakened became colder, more logical in their thinking. They started speaking about people as populations, problems as equations. The weight of millions of years of inherited memory changed their perspective on life and death. This is what we feared, Heijin told Taemin one night. They're losing their humanity. Not all of them, Taemin observed. Some are handling it better. Minho still jokes with his friends. Yuna still cries at sad movies. They're changed, but they're still human. For now. But as they access more of their inherited knowledge, as they grow more powerful, will that remain true? It was a question without an answer. But they didn't have time to worry about it, because that's when the first attack happened. A research station on the Galactic Rim, the same one that had been monitoring the dimensional seals, went silent. When rescue ships arrived, they found the station intact but empty. Every living being was gone. Not killed, not abducted, just erased from existence as if they had never been. The Archon confirmed their worst fears. The Void Singers have begun probing our reality. They are testing the strength of their prisons. This was a warning shot. But you said we had 30 years. Velcross protested over the communication link. I said approximately 30 years. The seals are degrading faster than my models predicted. We may have considerably less time. As if to emphasize the point, a massive spatial anomaly appeared at the edge of the galaxy. It was visible to every observatory, a tear in space itself, and from that tear came something that made sensors scream and artificial intelligences crash. It was a form that existed in too many dimensions, a shape that violated the laws of physics just by existing. The Void Singer broadcasted a message. Not in words, but in pure mathematical concepts that translated to every language simultaneously. The inheritors are unworthy. We reclaim what was stolen, then it demonstrated its power. A star system, home to 3 billion crystalline beings, simply ceased to exist. Not destroyed, not consumed, just unmade. One moment it was there on every sensor, every map. The next moment it was gone as if it had never existed at all. Panic spread across the galaxy. The Concordat military mobilized, but Admiral Velcross knew the truth. Their weapons couldn't hurt these things. Their shields couldn't stop them. They needed the awakened humans. Taemin received the call in the middle of the night. Captain, Velcross said, his usual arrogance replaced by desperation. We need your people. All of them. The Void Singers have arrived early and we have no defense. We have 46 awakened humans, Taemin said. 46 against an enemy that nearly destroyed my godlike ancestors. What do you expect us to do? I expect you to try, Velcross said. Because if you don't, everyone dies. Not in 30 years, but in 30 days. Taemin looked at the awakened volunteers, at these people who had sacrificed their normal lives to become something more. They looked back at him with glowing eyes, waiting for orders. Archon, he said quietly, how many more precursor installations are there? 17 major sites scattered across the galaxy. Each one contains weapons, technology, and knowledge. If you activate them all and access their full power, you might stand a chance. Might? The Void Singers have had 3 million years to grow stronger, the Archon said. I cannot guarantee victory, but I can guarantee that doing nothing ensures extinction. Taemin made his decision. Then we activate them all. We find every installation, awaken every system, and we gather an army. He turned to the volunteers. I won't order you to fight, but I am asking, will you help me save the galaxy? Yes, they said as one. Then let's go to war. Behind them, Earth's sky lit up with another spatial anomaly. The Void Singers were coming and time had just run out. The awakened humans split into teams, each one heading to a different precursor installation across the galaxy. Taemin led the primary team, traveling with Lee Yuna, Kang Minho, and 20 others. Their ship, heavily modified with precursor technology, could cross the galaxy in hours instead of weeks. As they jumped from system to system, Activating dormant installations, more humans volunteered for awakening. Word had spread about the Void Singers and people were terrified. Hundreds, then thousands came forward, willing to risk the transformation to save their families. But not everyone survived. The fatality rate held steady at around 8%. Each death hurt, but there was no time to mourn properly. The Void Singers were destroying systems daily now. Entire civilizations vanished in moments. The Concordant military tried to evacuate planets in the Singers' path, but there were too many worlds and too little time. "We've activated 12 installations," Hagen reported during a briefing. She looked exhausted, dark circles under her eyes. 3,000 humans are now awakened. The Archon says we can access basic precursor weapon systems, but the really powerful technology requires more awakened minds working in concert. "How many more?" Taman asked. 10,000 minimum, maybe 20,000 to be safe. "That will take weeks we don't have." "I know." Hagen pulled up a star map showing the Void Singers' progress. 3 of them were now in the galaxy, carving paths of destruction. At their current rate, they'll reach the core systems in 10 days. That includes Earth. Taman stared at the map, feeling the weight of impossible choices. They needed more awakened humans, but the process took time and killed people. They needed to stop the Void Singers now, but they weren't strong enough yet. There was no good answer. Then Kang Minho spoke up. "What if we don't wait for them to come to us? What if we attack first?" "With what?" Velcross demanded over the comm. He had been coordinating the Concordant military response, such as it was. "We've thrown everything at them. Nothing works. Our weapons pass through them like they're not even there." "Because you're using conventional weapons," Minho said. "But the Awakened can perceive dimensional shifts. We can see where the Void Singers actually exist, not just their projection into our reality. If we hit them in their true dimensional space, we might be able to hurt them." "It's a good theory," the Archon said, appearing in hologram form, "but extremely dangerous. To attack the Void Singers in their true dimension, you would need to partially shift your own dimensional existence. If you lose focus for even a moment, you could be trapped between realities forever." "Then we practice," Taman said. "How long would it take to train the Awakened in dimensional combat?" "For basic proficiency, 3 days. For mastery, years. 3 days it is." They set up training facilities at the largest precursor installation, a vast station that orbited a neutron star. The awakened humans practiced shifting their perception between dimensions, learning to see reality as the Void Singers did. It was disorienting and painful. Several people lost their sanity in the process, their minds unable to handle existing in multiple dimensions simultaneously. But slowly, they learned. Yuna discovered she could create dimensional anchors, fixing points in space that couldn't be unmade. Minho learned to fold weapons through dimensional rifts, attacking from angles that didn't exist in normal space. Park Do-hyun found he could sense the Void Singers before they arrived, feeling the distortions they caused in reality. On the 3rd day, a Void Singer approached the training station. The Concordant fleet prepared to evacuate, but Taman gave a different order: stand and fight. The awakened humans deployed in small fighter craft, each one enhanced with precursor technology. The Void Singer appeared as a mass of impossible geometry, a shape that hurt to perceive. It began its attack, trying to unmake the station the same way it had destroyed dozens of others. But this time, something fought back. Yuna projected dimensional anchors around the station, stabilizing local reality. The Void Singer's unmaking wave crashed against those anchors and dispersed harmlessly. While it was confused, Minho led an attack squadron. They shifted their dimensional existence and fired weapons that existed in the same space as the Void Singer's true form. The entity screamed. It was a sound that existed beyond human hearing, a vibration felt in the soul rather than the ears. For the first time since the invasion began, a Void Singer had been hurt. It retaliated with fury, warping space around the attacking fighters. 2 of them were caught in a dimensional collapse. Their pilots lost between realities, but the others pressed the attack. Taman joined them, his own ship enhanced by his direct connection to the Archon. He could see the Void Singer's true form now, a vast consciousness that existed across multiple dimensions simultaneously, and he could see its weakness. "Concentrate fire on the nexus point," he ordered, marking a location on everyone's displays. "That's where it anchors itself to our dimension." The awakened humans focused their attack on that single point, pouring dimensional energy weapons into it. The Void Singer thrashed, trying to retreat, but Yuna's anchors held it in place. For 30 seconds that felt like hours. They maintained their assault. Then the Void Singer simply vanished, retreating into deeper dimensional space. They had won. Cheers erupted across the comm channels. The Concordat fleet, which had watched in disbelief, added their own celebration. For the first time since the invasion began, they had a victory. But Taman didn't celebrate. He was staring at the casualty reports. 2 pilots lost, 3 more driven insane by dimensional exposure, a dozen injured. They had driven off 1 Void Singer, and it had cost them dearly. There were still 2 more out there, and the report said more were coming. We can't sustain losses like this, he told Hagen privately. Even if we win every battle, we'll run out of awakened humans before we run out of Void Singers. Then we need more, she said simply. More installations, more awakenings, more power, and more deaths. Every person we awaken has an 8% chance of dying. We've lost hundreds already, and we'll lose billions if we don't keep trying. Hagen's voice was hard. I hate it too, Captain. But we're past the point of safe choices. She was right. Taman sent out a galaxy-wide call for volunteers. Humans came from every world, every station, every ship. They knew the risks. They came anyway. The awakening facilities ran day and night. 5,000 more humans were awakened, then 10,000. The installations across the galaxy blazed with activity as dormant systems came back online. The precursors had left behind weapons that could crack planets, shields that existed in pocket dimensions, engines that could move entire moons. And slowly, humanity remembered how to use them. But the Void Singers were learning too. They adapted to the awakened humans' tactics, found ways around the dimensional weapons. A second battle ended in stalemate. A third ended in retreat. The awakened were growing stronger, but so was the enemy. Then the Archon made a disturbing announcement. I have detected 4 more Void Singers approaching from deep space. They will arrive in 5 days. When they do, we will face 7 of these entities simultaneously. Can we win? Felcross asked. Unknown, the Archon said. The Makers faced 12 Void Singers in their final war. They won, but it took them 10,000 years and cost them their humanity. You have 5 days and approximately 15,000 awakened humans. The mathematics do not favor victory. Taman looked at Earth through the station's windows. His home world. The ark his ancestors had created 3 million years ago. Somewhere down there his family lived, unaware of how close they were to extinction. Then we changed the mathematics, he said. Archon, what's the most powerful weapon the Makers ever created? The reality engine, the Archon said quietly. A device that could rewrite the fundamental laws of physics in a localized area. The Makers used it to create the dimensional prisons that held the Void Singers, but it required the combined power of 100,000 awakened humans to operate. We have 15,000. Then it will not be enough. What if we don't need to operate it fully? Minho suggested. What if we just need enough power to create 1 new prison? We trap all 7 Void Singers at once, then seal them away for another few million years. The Archon was silent for a long moment. It is possible, but the strain on the awakened humans would be immense. Many would not survive the process. Perhaps most. Taman looked at his team, at these people who had already sacrificed so much. We need to vote on this. Everyone gets a say. The vote was unanimous. They would activate the reality engine and trap the Void Singers no matter the cost. Because the alternative was watching the galaxy die. Tamin sent the message to all awakened humans. In 5 days we make our stand. Not for glory, not for power, but for every living thing in this galaxy. The Makers fought for 10,000 years. We only need to hold for 1 day. 1 day to save everything. 15,000 voices answered as one. We're ready. The final battle was about to begin.